Hey piano players, this is Warren. Welcome to today's video. I'm going to be showing you how to use the circle of fifths to learn all of the key signatures. And I'll also be including some bonus techniques to make that learning process even faster. So what exactly is the circle of fifths? Well, you can think of it as a visual tool to help you organize all of the key signatures. If you go clockwise on the circle of fifths, you will add one sharp at a time until you have all of them. If you go counterclockwise in the opposite direction, you're going to add one flat at a time until you get to all of those as well. So what are the benefits to learning the circle of fifths? Well, it's an easy way to build familiarity with each key. Since you're only adding one sharp or flat at a time, you can really baby step this approach. Once you are familiar with all the keys, an obvious thing is you're going to be able to learn piano pieces a lot faster, whatever it is you're studying on piano, as well as being able to practice things like technique, chord progressions, transposition, even things like improv. Now, if you want some free resources, there are definitely a lot available online. I'll include a link to at least one of them in the description below. But just in case you have some extra money to spend on something that you don't need, let me show you what I got off of Amazon. It might be a little bit overpriced. I think I paid about 15 bucks for this at the time, and you might think that's a little overkill, but I don't care because it's a really beautiful looking poster and the texture is nice as well. But let's go ahead and check out what is so great about this poster. So on the poster you can clearly see the circle of fifths, organizes all the keys beautifully, each major key and corresponding minor key, the number of sharps or flats in every single key, as well as the key signature. And in the upper right hand corner, just a quick rundown of the major and minor chord progressions. In the bottom of the poster, it's a lot of information. Every chord and every minor and major key, as well as just a short little ditty on the circle of fifths and an introduction to transposition. Now, why is it called the circle of fifths? And in my understanding, I'm not going to give you some technical jargon or a proper academic definition for it. The way I think about it is when you go clockwise or counterclockwise, you're starting from C major, and when you go to the next key, it's an interval of a fifth apart. For instance, going clockwise, C major to G major, it's 5 keys apart, and you're adding one sharp, and then you continue on until you have all of them. And if you go in the opposite direction, which is counterclockwise, C major to F major, you have one flat, and then you add one flat at a time until you have all of them. Alright, now that we're at the piano, I'm going to demonstrate what I mean. Even more specifically, the interval of a fifth. So what I mean by interval of a fifth is 5 keys apart. I think I already mentioned that, but I'm just trying to be more specific here. So C to G major, just going 5 keys up at a time. It's kind of like playing a 5-key scale, and then going down from C major to F major if we're doing all the flats. And you notice I did play B flat because you have to remember the correct accidentals for the keys that you are in. Okay, so let's go ahead and just take all the keys with the sharps. We'll go through them in order together. Okay, going to right, C major, up to G major, okay, G major to D major. I'm just gonna move down here, otherwise I'm gonna go off camera. D major to A major, A to E, E to B, B to F major or F sharp major, remember the accidental, F sharp to C sharp major, and that was the last one. Let's do the same thing with flats now, and I'll take my left hand for this one. That's F major from C down to B flat, down to E flat, down to A flat, D flat major, G flat major, and the last one, C flat major. Don't get confused just because it's a white key. Now, one thing I want to mention before we move on, if you look at the poster, going through all the flats, they actually refer to it as the cycle, you can still think of it as circle, of fourths. The reason why that is that instead of going down if you were to go up from C major to F, there's 4 keys right there. It's like an interval of a fourth. So you could actually choose to go up that way instead of going down. You could do the same thing with the sharps, just going in the opposite direction. So if we went from C, and instead of going up by 5 keys, if we went down by 4, you notice you're still cycling through the exact order that's going clockwise. We're just going down by an interval of a fourth. It really doesn't matter, just do whatever you feel like. Now what you'll notice as well is that a few of these keys are exactly the same. And those keys are D flat major and C sharp major, F sharp major and G flat major, B major and C flat major. At first glance, you might look at it and be saying, what are you talking about? The number of sharps and the flats are different for all the keys that you mentioned. And while that might be true, it's purely a visual thing. If you go ahead and play any pattern in those keys, such as a scale or some chords or arpeggios, you'll notice that it's exactly the same. You won't be able to tell the difference, at least physically. So you can think of it as 2 ways of saying one thing. And the technical word for this is called enharmonic spelling. For instance, E flat is the same thing as D sharp, and even with the white key such as F, you can consider that E sharp. The key B can also be considered C flat. It just depends on what key you're in. Now before we get to these bonus techniques, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that like button, because each like button will raise my self-esteem by 5%. I'm just totally kidding about that, but it really does help my channel grow, and I appreciate your support in advance. You guys are awesome. Now the first bonus technique I want to teach you is the mnemonic. And a mnemonic is basically a phrase that you use to memorize something. You can think of TGIF, thank God it's Friday, or OMG, oh my God. So the first mnemonic I'm going to teach you has to do with the order of sharps. And it's this: fat corgis go down alleys eating burritos. That comes out to F, C, G, D, A, E, B. That's the order of all of the sharps. For flats, it's B, E, A, D. Think of a necklace, like a necklace bead. Gum, candy, fruit. So that comes out to B, E, A, D, G, C, F. Now the reason why this is so useful to completely memorize the order of flats and the order of sharps is that no matter what key you're in, this order is going to be exactly the same. It's never going to change. And by the way, if this order is not exactly the same as you see it on paper, you have a bad arrangement. This is the reason I have problems with free sheet music. They have good intentions, but most of the time they have no idea what they're doing. That doesn't mean that they should stop, just know what you're getting into. Now when you're memorizing this, I highly suggest try to visualize it as deeply as possible, because if you do that, it's really going to help you memorize it on a deeper level. Like a fat corgi going down an alley eating a burrito, that's really not hard to visualize, it's just a ridiculous scene. But how do you do it with the flats? Well, the way I think about it is, I literally imagine a necklace bead that's alive, chewing on a piece of gum, then it gets smashed by a Jolly Rancher, like a piece of candy, and the Jolly Rancher in turn gets eaten by a piece of fruit. It's weird, but it works, and don't ask me how I came up with that. You don't want to know. Now the last bonus technique to really speed up this process is to use flashcards. And the reason why you want to use flashcards is because it takes advantage of what is called the perceptual learning method. And that's technically not the correct name for it. I think it's called perceptual learning model, but I just think method sounds better. And the science behind it is basically you can learn things randomly and you can do it as fast as possible. As long as you are double checking your answers, it's a really effective way to learn. The reason why you want it to be random is life is not predictable, and so is learning as well as piano. You are not always going to see the same exact order of key signatures, especially when you're improving with piano. There are going to be just so many more options available for you when you become more advanced, that if you see a key that you're not accustomed to, that's really going to throw you off. So while the circle of fifths is a really great way to get familiar with the keys, it's only good in the beginning. The next step is to just completely mix it up, because if you don't do that, you're gonna get stuck in that pattern Now you can get physical flashcards. I'll include a link to that in the description below. But what I like to use is an actual software on the computer, and it's called Anki. The great thing about this is you can create decks and whatever cards with whatever materials that you're studying. It could be different subject matter. It doesn't even have to do with music. So you can mix up all the keys and it will just present it to you in as random an order as possible. I just put the keys in there, but you can go so far as to insert actual images. It's one of my favorite tools. I use it every day, but I also want you to be careful not to confuse it with the other Anki app, which is a spaced repetition software. That's something I don't have time to go into today. It's not related to today's video, so just make sure not to download the wrong one. But I use that one too, and I'm excited to share how I use it in a future video. So that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, please leave me a comment below. Would love to hear your thoughts on it. If it's your first time here, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, like this video, share this video. I'll see you guys next time, and happy practicing.